Welcome to this class on the methods of economic analysis. This class will focus on the economic cost-benefit analysis. In particular, will be part 1. It's the first part of the two classes on the economic cost-benefit analysis that we'll have in this course. So the economic cost-benefit analysis is a way to make decisions on resource allocation through the selection of those projects that mostly and best complies with national goals. So economic cost-benefit analysis is about the problem of resource allocation. That is a critical problem for all government, above all when the government have scarce resources to be invested in projects, and therefore is a critical task to be performed by government before taking decision about a project. So the outline of this class is organized as follows. So first of all, we'll have an introduction about economic cost-benefit analysis. Then we'll look at the principles of economic cost-benefit analysis, also abbreviated as ECBA. Then we'll go more in depth and we'll distinguish economic from social analysis. We'll see that the two refers to the two different stages of the economic cost-benefit analysis. And then we'll analyze the economic cost-benefit analysis process. So let's start from the introduction. So economic cost-benefit analysis is a means of allocating national resources at the project level. So this means that it's a method that government should adopt in order to, it's one of the methods that government should adopt to understand how to best allocate national scarce resources to strategic projects, going beyond the financial, commercial analysis of the project that is made by investors. So here, these decisions have an impact on a wide range of stakeholders in terms of social groups, and therefore is a decision of common concern. And so it's important to adopt an analysis as economic cost-benefit analysis that is a wide perspective on a project, so that takes an economic approach and a wider view on the impact that the project is, not only for the investor, but for the economic and social system as a whole. In order to understand better what economic cost-benefit analysis is, we will now give a look to the principle of ECBA. So first of all, the typical approach of economic benefit analysis is with and without project approach. So this means that we determine from the national government perspective the impact on the project by comparing two scenarios. Two potential scenarios. One scenario with the project and another without the project. So in theory, we are looking at the project with an incremental view. This means that we try to understand what happens when the project is not realized, and so we basically remain status quo. And how the status quo changes when the project is implemented. So what are the main direct and indirect effects as compared to the status quo? So the idea is, I have a project, this creates a given scenario. How should I evaluate this scenario? I should compare this scenario with the scenario where the project is not realized. So I just look at all the incremental changes that the project generates. So all the incremental benefits, all the incremental costs. So the idea is to look at the project with an incremental perspective. Second principle is that everything is inside borders. This means that economic cost-benefit analysis is focused on what happens in the country. So it's interested in the impact that the project is within borders, inside borders, for both the economic system and the society. and the different society groups that are represented in a country, and it's not concerned instead about the international implications that the project is beyond the borders of the country. Third aspect, we adopt the shadow accounting prices. So this is something on which we have spent a good amount of time, because this is the shadow pricing is at the core of economic cost-benefit analysis. So what we have seen is that financial analysis is based on market prices, because this in the end affects the flows of real and financial resources in the perspective of the investor. On the contrary, we have said that when we are concerned about the economic impact of a project, what matters is the true economic value of the resources that could be different from market prices, where market prices are distorted when there are given conditions. In order to adjust distortion in market prices to correctly assess the impact of a project on the national parameter of interest, we have to calculate shadow prices that reflect the true economic value of the resources that are used by the project and generated by the project. In this particular slide, we use the word accounting in parentheses because I remind you that in theory, shadow prices are derived by equilibrium economic model. So shadow prices should represent the impact that in equilibrium and an increase in the scarce resource will have on the output variable of our interest. Where in this case we also commented about that this approach is not often feasible, and so as a second best we use accounting prices that, however, are determined in a way that try to reflect the true economic value of the resource. So for shadow accounting prices, we intend accounting prices that, however, try to represent the economic and not the market price of a resource. In case clearly we have distortion in market prices, so market prices are different from the economic value of the resource. Clearly, if this distortion do not exist, we have no problems, and we can use market prices and is a measure of shadow prices. So now we can look at the general framework of economic cost-benefit analysis, and we can look at the typical logic that is behind the economic cost-benefit analysis. First of all, when we perform an economic cost-benefit analysis, we have to start from the definition of an objective function. So this clearly depends on the national plan and on the goals of the national regional government. So in this case, the definition of the objective function is strictly interrelated with the more general government policies and their goals. So here we could have a variable, we could have an objection function expressed in terms of GDP, national income, that are the typical economic objectives, or in terms of balance of payments, in terms of consumption, in terms of investments, of savings, depending on what is the goal of the national policy or the regional policy. Or we could have social objectives in terms of income distribution and equity among social groups, so among contemporaries, or equity in terms of intergenerational equilibrium. So depending on what is the national priority, what is the national goal, we'll define a given objective function for the ECBA. Then we have to account for resource constraints. When we evaluate a given project, this project will use scarce resources, so will be realized within the context of resource constraints. So we have said that the fact that we have scarce resources can affect the economic value of the resources, and therefore we have to understand very well what are the resources that are constrained and how this impacts the economic value of these resources beyond the market price of these resources. Then we have to analyze the financial flows, and these are relevant for the financial analysis, but they are relevant for the economic analysis only to the extent that they are related to the distribution effects, in the sense that what matters in economic terms, so for the economic cost-benefit analysis, is the consumption and the production of scarce resources that have economic value given their scarcity, so given their nature. The financial flows reflect instead transfers of wealth among social groups from the government to the project, and in theory they are not relevant to determine what is the value, economic value created by a project, but they become relevant when we have also a social objective of redistribution of wealth among social groups or among generations, and so in this case the financial flows become relevant, but only with respect to the distribution effects. Then we analyze benefits and costs. So clearly the benefits, as we'll see, mainly direct benefits and direct benefits. So there will be some economic benefits that will be immediately and directly attributable to the project, whereas there will be indirect benefits mainly in the form of externalities that are not immediately obvious, but that should be determined and analyzed and measured by the economic cost-benefit analysis. And then there are costs related to the consumption of scarce resources that should be measured in terms of shadow prices. So the cost-benefit analysis is mainly analyzing and comparing and balancing benefits and costs. Benefits in terms of the contribution of the parameter that is chosen for the objective function, and costs in terms of consumption of scarce resources that are constrained in the economy. Then we are looking at the distribution of the benefits and costs among social groups, because we could have a social problem of inequality between social groups, and so one of the objective functions is always discussing is also the redistribution of wealth among contemporaries or among generations. So the fact that benefits and costs also have a given distribution across contemporaries or generations is a matter. It's something that matters for the achievement of the social objective of the government. Then externalities have to be included. So we have discussed externalities in previous classes, and externalities are all those effects that the project has, but that are external to the project. So it's something that, unless including in the price of the resources, is not of interest to the financial investors, because there are effects produced for the external environment, not for the project. They are not affecting the real financial flows of a project, but having an effect on other activities of the country and the economic system. They are relevant for the government perspective, and so they have to be identified, measured if possible, and then included into the evaluation, because a project could have negative or positive externalities that have not been included in the analysis so far, but that have a critical impact on the objective function that I have defined for my economic cost-benefit analysis. Then there is the problem of the present value of net benefits. When we have discussed the valuation of projects from a financial perspective, we've remarked that when the benefits occur over a long period of time, the benefits are not immediately comparable, but you have to discount them to the present moment in order to make them comparable. The result of the discounting of the future benefits of a project had been defined as present value. So this is true for the financial analysis, but this also can impact the economic analysis, because also in terms of economic analysis, you will have net benefits distributed over several years, and so these net benefits could be not comparable. So let's assume that you have been able to determine for quite a long period net benefits as difference between benefits and costs. You can, in order to determine what is the economic value of this project, you cannot just add them up, because referring to different periods, they are not comparable, because of the question of time value that, if you remember, was also related to the preference for immediate consumption. So also in case of the economic analysis, we have to discount the net benefits that we calculate in this way. So we have the present values of net benefits. But there is an important distinction as compared to financial analysis, because in the case of financial analysis, we are discounting these net benefits using the cost of capital that was determined on the basis of the expected return of the investors. Now we should do that on the basis of the social discount rate that takes into account also broader considerations that go beyond the expected return of investors, and that we'll analyze in greater detail in the next class. And finally, I have to determine a criterion of acceptability, in the sense that once that I've set the general framework for the analysis, I have calculated the benefits and costs, I have calculated the net benefits for all the periods of the life of the project, and I have discounted these net benefits using a social discount rate, and therefore I got a present value of net benefits. As we did for financial analysis, we had to compare this present value of net benefit with some kind of criterion that makes the project acceptable. That can be expressed in terms of hurdle rate or cutoff rate, as we also discussed from the financial analysis. So I have to understand what is the criterion that makes a given present value net benefits acceptable. So a final general issue about ECBA is the selection and comparison of projects for ECBA. And in particular, there are two aspects that we should consider. First is the selective economic valuation, and the second is the equal treatment for all projects. What does it mean? It means that, first of all, as we already discussed at the beginning of this part on economic analysis is not to be necessarily performed for all the project. In some cases, the financial analysis could be sufficient. And what we said in that case is that you typically add economic analysis to financial analysis when there are two conditions. The first one is that financial analysis is highly distortive, in the sense that there are market prices are highly distorted, or there are relevant externalities. And the second condition was that the project has to have a strong impact on the economic system. This is because economic analysis is costly. It requires a huge effort, and an incremental effort over financial analysis requires making a lot of corrections, as you are understanding at this point. So this additional cost is justified when these two conditions hold. But if either one of these two conditions does not hold, clearly the need for having economic analysis does not exist anymore, and you can save the cost of additional adjustments that are needed by economic analysis. The second relevant aspect is that once that you have selected the projects of interest, they should be treated equally, in the sense that the method should be applied to all the projects in the same way, and the same analysis should be applied to all the projects in the same way. So if you are applying the ECBA to one project, you want to compare this project with another one, the same general methodology has to be applied also to the regional project. And moreover, just to make an example, if you have applied a given shadow pricing rule to one of the input or the output of the project, you should do the same, so they should make the same assumption also for the other project, in the sense that the general methodology and specific rules you have applied within this methodology should be the same for all the projects that you are evaluating, because otherwise comparison is not fair, and therefore the decision could not be made in an appropriate way. So now let's give a deep look at economic and social analysis, because both economic and social analysis matter for economic cost-benefit analysis. Both the economic and the social dimensions can be relevant, and this is something that we'll analyze also in greater detail in this and next class, but this is something that matters for ECBA. And first of all, we have to understand that economic and social analysis are just are the two core components of economic cost-benefit analysis, but are only two of the many dimensions that typically I can consider within the framework of ECBA. Because as you can see in the slide, I could have several dimensions that are relevant for ECBA. In particular, I could have the market dimension, technology dimension, the financial dimension, and then I have the economic and social dimension that are the most relevant one, lie at the core of the analysis, and then our environmental dimension in terms of impact of the project on the environment. And what here matters is that economic and social issues could be different, even though complementary, as we'll discuss in a moment, because economic analysis is about the impact of the project on national and regional goals expressed in terms of GDP, national income, or another economic parameter. So we are interested here in the impact that the project has on some economic variable. Instead, social analysis takes into account also the distribution effect, and here, therefore, there is not only an economic objective, but it is also an equity objective that is related to distribution of resources among social groups. So, as we'll see in a moment, the UNIDO takes an economic approach to economic and social analysis. So, they start from the economic analysis of a project, but there are social evaluation of cost and benefits that are derived on the basis of weights that are assigned to price distortion and social groups. So first of all, they have economic analysis, and then after that, they perform also social analysis by posing different weights on the income or the outputs for different social groups. At this point, we can look at the ECBA process. We have now analyzed all the general issues of the framework of ECBA, so now we can try to pose them into a process logic and to understand what are the different steps that have to be accomplished in order to pass from financial and commercial analysis to the final output of economic cost-benefit analysis. So in this graph, we have a representation of the economic cost-benefit analysis process. So as you can see, the starting point of the process is represented by the commercial analysis. So all the first part of this course that was about the financial analysis, so the determination of the commercial value of the project, is anyhow important because determine the basis for the economic cost-benefit analysis, in the sense that we start from the understanding of the creation of value of the project for the private investors, and then we make all the needed correction to pass from the creation of financial value for the private investor to the final appraisal of the economic value that instead the project creates for the country and the economy as a whole. So the first step that you typically accomplish after commercial analysis is the adjustment for externalities. As we say, the externalities are not relevant for commercial analysis because are by definition external to the project, but are relevant instead for the government because they represent indirect effect that the project is on the economic system or the economic results, and therefore they should be included. Clearly, in a quantitative analysis, we could include only those externalities that can be quantified, but the analysis of non-quantifiable externalities could be done at a later moment when you will be able to make the final decision about the project. Second, we have to define a numeraire. We have discussed this issue in a previous class. The numeraire is the unit of account, for example, income or consumption, that are used to determine the economic value of a project. And as we discussed in that class, we saw that the numeraire of the CBA performed by UNIDO is represented by the units of consumption. Then you have to select the social discount rate. The social discount rate is needed to calculate the present value of the net economic benefits of the project. And we have already started introducing the issue of how the social discount rate is different from the discount rate that we use for financial analysis. We'll understand better how a social discount rate is calculated in next class. Then we correct market price distortion. As we said in commercial analysis, you typically consider market prices for the analysis of financial flows, because in the end is what matters for the financial flows of the project. All the transactions of a project are based on market prices. So if we look at the value creation for the investors, so we look at the cash flows, what matters is market price. But we have discussed essentially that market prices could be distorted, that they could not reflect the economic value of a resource. And so if this is true, if there are conditions that makes market price not a good measure of the economic value of a resource, we have to correct market price and calculate the shadow prices, as we have discussed several times in the previous classes. And in case the project is traded inputs or outputs, and official rate of foreign exchange is distorted, is not representative of the economic value of the foreign currency, we have to apply the shadow price of forex, that stays for foreign exchange. That is something that we have discussed in the previous class. So applying the same methodology that we have seen in the previous class, and by calculating, if possible, the adjustment ratio that allows us to pass from the official rate of foreign exchange to the shadow price of foreign exchange. All these activities that we consider here are part of what we have defined in the previous slides as economic analysis. So this means that once that I have performed all these adjustments that are here indicated in these boxes, I pass from the financial value of the project to an economic value of the project. So at this point I'm able to understand what is the impact of the project on the objective function that I've chosen for the economic analysis given the national goal. So for example, at this point, if my objective function is represented by an initial income or by consumption. Here I can say at the end of the economic analysis how a project impacts on the national income or on consumption in that country. That is different clearly from the results that I get from the commercial analysis, that if the project increases or not the wealth of the investors, the private investors of the project. So I started from the calculation that I made for financial analysis, then I made all the adjustments needed for determination of economic value. At this point, I understand what is the impact of the project on the economic objective function of the ECBA analysis. However, at this point, I have not any implication for the distribution of this effect, in the sense that the project generates an output for a given parameter, so it can increase GDP, national income, consumption, but the calculation of this impact does not say anything yet about how this income of this increase in GDP is distributed among different social groups, both contemporaries, but between contemporaries or among generations. So I have to perform another set of activities that are defined as social analysis. So here, as I was discussing also in the previous slide, I have the social analysis. The first part was economic analysis, was concerned about the total impact that the project has on the economic parameter of interest. Here, in social analysis, I am concerned about how this effect of the project is distributed across different kinds of social groups. So first of all, I have an income flow analysis that allows me to understand how gains and losses of a project are distributed among different social groups. For example, in a project with a positive effect on the national income, I could have a situation where some groups are mainly suffering costs and other groups are mainly getting benefits. So this could be something that is acceptable or not for a government independently of the economic output of the project. So the project could be important for the total economic output, but could create inequality about how the cost of benefits of the project are distributed across social groups. So if these social groups start from an original inequality, this could be a way also to balance the wealth distribution, but if this is not, or if the sacrifices for some of the groups are too high, this project even being having a positive impact on the economic parameter of interest cannot be accepted because it's not consistent with the social objective of the government. The other thing that is interesting is what is the impact of the project on savings versus consumption. And this is about the distribution of the benefits of the project across generations. Because if one of the results of the project is to increase savings, this means that I'm foregoing actual consumption and I will increase future consumption. So the project will have a benefit for the future generation and a sacrifice, a cost for the actual generation. So again, this could be a result that is in line with the national goal, or could be something that is contrasting the national goals, but it's something that I have to consider in my analysis. Then I have income distribution effects, because again, the fact that national income increases does not mean that increases proportionally for all the groups. And again, here the income distribution effect should be evaluated both among contemporaries, so among different current social groups, or among different generations in terms of moving costs and benefits from the present generation to future generations. And then you could adjust for eventual policy goal, and you could add in the end merits and demerits that a project is with specific reference to given policy goals, and this could be a plus or a minus for a project independently from the analysis that we have performed so far. Now that social analysis has been completed, at this point we have a result. Before having the final economic appraisal, we can have a sensitivity analysis to understand how different assumptions about all these steps can impact on the final output. So this is a way to check whether the result of the analysis is robust or not to different specification of the critical assumptions. And finally, after the sensitivity analysis, I will have the economic appraisal. So this is the moment when I will make the final decision about the project, considering all the economic, social aspects, and having a final present value of the net benefits that account for both the economic objective and the social objectives that are part of the objective function of the ECBA process. This is clearly the most general framework for the process of ECBA. There are some cases where the analysis could be limited to commercial analysis. In the case where I discussed it before, there are no large distortion, there is not big impact of the project on the economy as a whole. Or I could start economic cost benefit analysis and limit that only to economic analysis. And this happens when there are no particular social benefits associated with this project, or there are no social goals of the government. So in theory, I could have only the economic analysis. I could be only interested in the total impact of a project on economic analysis and not consider the social implications. If we said we are in a country that has problem of imbalances and inequalities between social group, regions, and so on, the social analysis could become a relevant objective, and so a relevant part of the CBA, and so I have a weighting of the income that accrues to the different social goals, and this different weighting will clearly modify the final result of the project in terms of economic cost benefit analysis. All this in the end will bring us to a deeper and wider comprehension and understanding of the effect of the project for the economic and social system. In the end, will give us more information about the decision that we have to make. And in the next class, we'll look at some relevant details of this process. So this class is finished, and I thank you for the attention. As usual, I remind you that if you need further materials on the topics covered in this class, you can refer to the course website. Thank you.